Everyone, today's Thursday, July 22nd, 2022, and we are here for a work session. And as always, we're going to start with the pledge. Frank, can you please take the lead?
I would love to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Frank, and I have two quick announcements. First, a reminder that the Jamesport Carnival at the George Young Community Center is underway and runs through Saturday. It'll culminate with fireworks at 10:30 p.m. and there'll be rides and games and food and tons of family entertainment, and we'll hope to see you there. And second, all are encouraged to visit Grandeur Bell Park in downtown Riverhead this Saturday, July 23rd, for a light art display along the Peconic River. Admission is free. This is a walkable art gallery and includes sculptures and LED lights and all kinds of reflective materials, and it's very enlightening. It's a visual art show, and it's going to be absolutely great with lights. And just as a side note, today is going to be really hot, and the senior center is open until 4:30 to cool off. So we're going to move on to our first discussion.
Could I just take 1 moment? I'm sorry. I'd just like to wish a heartfelt happy birthday to some of our staff members here in Town Hall, Joanne Cannon and Devin Higgins from your office. Happy birthday to them. And our fellow council member, Kenneth Rothwell, the mayor of Bermuda. Congratulations, happy birthday, many, many more.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
Happy birthday, Kenneth.
Should have brought a cake. All right, our first discussion includes the DRI grant that we received early this year, $10 million to enhance our downtown. We've been engaged for 4 months in a very lengthy process. It's a state process. It's not driven by us. It is an inclusive process. It's a process that includes members of the CDA, myself, and then another team from the governor's office. We are about to submit the application for funding. There's been some designation on funds. This was all vetted. This was all agreed by the entire committee. There's been 3 public hearings here in Town Hall, open to the entire public. And there's been meetings, obviously, between what we call the LPC. Those were also open to the public. Not necessary for discussion, but at the end, people were able to come in, and everything is online. You can go on to riverheaddri.com. However, as an added, and to make sure that everybody is inclusive and we don't miss anybody in the process, myself and the CDA director decided, let's bring it to a work session and to bring it all together for everyone, and I think this is going to be very interesting. And Dawn, can you take it from here, please?
Sure. So we really wanted to provide the board not only with a DRI update, because that process has been ongoing for a while, but just a general downtown discussion, because if you're walking downtown, it looks like there's not much going on, but there is really a lot going on. So we wanted to, and we've been super busy and immersed in this DRI project, grant project. So, and as the supervisor said, the DRI brings $10 million to the town for community projects, not to the town government. So what happens is we are awarded $10 million for community projects within the town, and that required the project sponsors to apply again. So it sounds a little confusing sometimes. It's not the typical grant project. And then through the process, the local planning committee is formed that was comprised of many of our local community members who have been participating for many years. That LPC creates a slate of projects where right now they're looking at 10 projects. I'll give you just a quick overview. The Upper Town Square, which would be the plaza part between the buildings, the Resilient Riverfront Amphitheater, Peconic Park and Adaptive Children's Playground, the TOD project, which you're familiar with, the Long Island Science Centers project, the Suffolk Theaters project, a project at the Riverhead Free Library, an enhancement to the downtown public art program, which is part of the Reflections program that you just mentioned, Riverhead Town Rowing Facility and Floating Boathouse, as well as pedestrian and Main Street enhancements to make that pedestrian Main Street a little bit more walkable and attractive. So, as you know, the grant was a $10 million grant. 9.7 million is what will be awarded. 300,000 of that 10 million went directly to the consultants that assisted through that process. And so the LPC's got a hard job of sort of figuring out what projects will be funded, because ultimately they came up with a slate of 13 million plus in projects. The good news about that is that some projects, well, the bad news is that some projects won't be funded fully or funded at all. But the good news is that the LPC has packaged these projects in a way that allows us to really apply for future funding. So when we take those projects, we say, you know, a local planning committee through a public engagement process and the budget and all of the drawings and everything. So it makes it a nice compact project for us to move forward on. So those are the things that are happening with that. And what's next is the LPC is going to vote on the slate of projects. The projects will then be delivered to the state of New York. The governor or her designee will then pick what projects are funded and how much will be funded. So we're wrapping that up. It's a super quick project. And it's really landed sort of in the middle of all of our downtown revitalization projects, which started just a few years ago with the TOD and the town square, and we've been moving rapidly through them. So I just wanted to, you know, give everybody that overview that we started these projects, and now we're continuing to move them ahead, even though the DRI was not, I don't want to call it an interruption because it was certainly welcomed, but it was a lot of work in the middle of everything we're doing. So our consultants, UDA, and Phil Myrick, who's consulting with UDA, Phil has an extensive background in activation of public spaces, and he can give you that when we get to the next step. But
I just wanted to say, if it was not clear, New York State is the one that said having.
Should you come up to the mic, Joe?
Yeah, you
Because
gotta
this is
come up to
public
the
hearing.
mic. I don't know why you're sitting in the audience either,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, Joe, come on
Yeah,
up.
Joe,
Here.
get in the group.
I just wanted to say, if it wasn't clear, that it was New York State who dictated to us to have a portfolio well in excess of the 9.7 that was available. So we couldn't just choose the town projects that we really want. So the next process, sometime in October, the governor will make the final selection out of that 13.7 million, or 14 million, whatever it is. And then, like Dawn had said, we're hopeful that it'll give us some future guidance on what to apply for in the upcoming years.
Well, I'm really glad that you stated it clearly, because I think sometimes there's misconception that the town government actually received this money.
Right.
And it's not. It's these projects that are
Correct.
that are going to be funded through the grant procedure and through the LPC.
Very different than almost
Yeah.
any other grant.
Yeah.
And it was certainly the work of the town board that allowed us to prepare the initial application with some highlighted projects that the town really wants. But then you sort of, when we got the award earlier this year in February, you sort of start once again at, not ground zero, but to review everything that could be done downtown with the local planning committee that was comprised of, I think, like, it was like a 50-50 mix. I want to say it's 15 people. Half were appointed by the state and half were chosen by us. But it was a long, arduous process that was productive, and we're certainly still grateful to you and to the state for allowing us to get to this point. It's exciting that the town is at a point where we haven't seen this type of momentum, certainly during my long tenure here, and it's exciting, so thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and I appreciate how much, over the years, how much you've done, and this is, you're getting rewarded.
It's
So,
all team.
yeah.
No,
all team.
when I say you, I understand this.
No, but I mean, like,
Yes.
it's certainly our department functions as a very cohesive team, but to have a town government and, 2 consecutive town board now that kept the politics out of things has been instrumental in allowing us to get this incredible momentum. I mean, the outside interest that downtown is finally attractive, just completely unheard of for us.
Well, your shirt says it all. We're Americans.
So we're just continuing now getting back on track to making the projects move ahead. So the Town Square project and the entire downtown riverfront area is now we started out at 100,000 feet, we're dropping down, now we're getting down to like 10,000 feet. And so Barry and Phil suggested a process that would help us really dial in on the activation that we need to make it all work. And once you are comfortable with that activation plan and where things will lay out and how they'll lay out and what they will be and how they're functioning, then you'll be able to fit all the other pieces back into the puzzle. So I'm going to turn it back over to Barry and Phil now so they can explain exactly what they're working on and how it's going to progress.
We're getting some feedback, Larry. Thank you.
Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Supervisor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, fantastic. Well, good morning, Supervisor and council members. It's great to see you today. I know it's warm, so I'm glad you're inside. And I agree about Joe's shirt. Very patriotic. But,
As usual.
and I think I just hear off of what he finished with. There's incredible momentum in Riverhead right now. We got to a point this spring where there were so many projects that were being sort of contemplated or thought about or worked on. It was kind of like traffic on Main Street. It was everywhere. And we said our recommendation to the town would be that we make sure that you get, at the end of the day, what you most desire, which is downtown activation, which is sustainable, and it's every day of the week. And we have these incredible events like you've been having this summer, like Live on 25, but we want that kind of energy all the time, maybe not quite to that level, but that kind of energy. So what an activation plan is really understanding how to activate everything outside of the buildings, all 4 seasons. And we look at it as a blueprint for moving forward. So instead of starting with the development pieces, it starts with the idea of how the town square becomes a real focus and activation element, how that spills down into the riverfront park, how that helps further animate Main Street. And the activation plan would go from basically the hotel to Peconic Avenue and from where the proposed north parking garage is to the riverfront. And that's what Phil Myrick, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, is going to be working on. And then, so we're going to work on an activation plan, and that is going to be institutionalized in what we call an open space framework. But again, it's everything in the public realm, everything that the town of Riverhead is responsible for. And then we're going to load into our model, which we already have of it at downtown, all of the different development proposals and how they need to relate to that. It's a very quick process. So, and it's 3 steps. The first step is engaging the town and stakeholders. We did a soft launch last month and had great feedback. We got our contract approved 2 weeks ago, which is why we did a soft launch. We didn't want to get out in front of the town too much. And then Phil Myrick, who's sitting in front of you today, our activation and placemaking expert, has been in Riverhead this week conducting interviews, listening, and he's in the audience if you, for a purpose, if you have ideas to share or activation questions. Because step 1 is really listening again to all of you to make sure that we get it right. This is not our plan at the end of the day, it's your plan. We also want you, or to remind you, that we got lots of great ideas out of the town square process, and we're carrying those ideas forward. We've had almost 8,000 hits on the town square website, which was created for the town's process, for the town square. It's amazing, and a lot of great ideas. So step 2 is really sorting through all that information, and we'll be doing that later this month, and creating a draft plan, which we will share with the board. and that's why it's a draft. And again, it's gonna have three components to it. The first is recommendations for activation. Then the second is within the open space framework, what goes where and how does that look
Dawn,
generally. And then thirdly, the buildings will get loaded in. And then the final thing is documenting our recommendations. We promised that we would do this very quickly because there's a sense of urgency with interest rates going up and all that you've got going, that this couldn't be a long process. So we said that we would be done before Labor Day, and then we'd be back to make a formal presentation to you, and I will be there in person after Labor Day. And I just want to finish by highlighting some of the things that we've heard from board members, which are critically important to us. And I just start with the parking garage. One is that we should be thinking about a liner building or a liner use that could be leased or rented. It's important as a revenue stream, so that will be included in the plan. And I would just say parking in general is critical here, because as we activate the riverfront, we're impacting parking, we're gonna have more people downtown, and we need to make sure the parking reservoir works. Another one is that we need to pick the best flood mitigation strategy of the things that were identified as possibilities by the Army Corps of Engineers, bring that back to you, and then your continuing discussions with the Army Corps need to advance, so the best flood mitigation strategy can be implemented. And the best flood mitigation strategy is one that does not cut off downtown from the Peconic River. I'll just give that away now. The public parking lot on the riverfront on the west side of where the town square would be, just east of Peconic Avenue, highest and best use needs to be identified through this process and how it would be configured. So we're working on that for you. We've been asked to try to rank priorities. What should you focus on first, second, and third? This goes to activation and placemaking, but it also goes to making sure that we create a really strong strength and then build on that, that we're not scattering things too much in initiatives, because we want the biggest bang for our buck. Town square design with board input. We know that you want to know exactly what's going in the town square. I think Phil's probably received hundreds of comments this week and thoughts about that. It can't just be designed for market day or for an event. It has to work every day. We'll be coming back to you with that. Should a hotel be shorter and taller to allow for a more gracious park and better connections between the town square and East End Arts and the playground? We will be studying that. I don't have an answer, but we've been asked to look at it, and we will. Inclusion of a splash pad and water feature, which we think based on the theming would be really important. Sponsorship or opportunity associated with the amphitheater. And these are just a few things that we've heard from different board members at different times. Your list is much longer, but I just wanted to flag a few things. And I'm going to conclude by saying something that Phil has said to us this week about his trip. He said this town has everything going for it right now. You know, now is the time. We have the momentum. The pieces of the puzzle are all there. It just has to be put together in the right way. And you have an opportunity, really an unprecedented opportunity to, I think, establish your brand within the region that's different than everyone else's, and be in a whole nother place than the town has been in past years. And with that, we would love to hear from you today. If there's other things that you would like us to consider, again, we're in listening mode today, not recommending mode. And if you'd like to hear from Phil, I mean, we only bring on the best, and he's the best. He comes from Project for Public Spaces. He was the CEO. He lives in New York. He does this all over the country, and he is the best.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, and we are being gentrified. It's the Renaissance has begun, and there's no doubt about it. There's no more talk. There's no more past plans, and maybe we'll get to them. And the community's engaged. I was at an event last night with a few hundred people from all over Long Island, and everybody knew about Riverhead. And so it's a very, very exciting moment in our history here in Riverhead. And I just want to make a note that I see our former Greenport Mayor Dave Capel, who is the state representative on the DRI, he served as a co-chair with me for the DRI. He's doing a great job. It's great working with him. He has a huge amount of knowledge. He helped develop Greenport. He's an addition. He is not participating. This is a local level. He's the state representative, but I admire the fact that he elected to come on just to see what we're doing, and I just want to thank you, Dave.
Maybe, Phil, you want to just give a little background on yourself and just what your thoughts were, the last couple of days, poking around.
Well, it's a privilege to be here in Riverhead at a time like this because, you guys have been slogging the hard slog for years and years, and you're seeing the fruit of what you've been at all that time. I get to drive down for 3 days and walk into a perfect setup for your future that you guys have really accomplished. And, it's not at all surprising to me that you won one of those DRI grants, which, are coveted and very, very hard to win. So, my hat's off to all of you. I'm impressed, and I have had a really good series of meetings. I came in on Tuesday, started meeting with folks around noon. I think on my list of interviews, I've met with almost everybody who's on your list that was recommended, that you just went through. So, I had a great conversation with the Science Center, with the Suffolk, with, also, the aquarium and that whole complex, and, East End Arts, and some of the businesses that are located close to the riverfront. Also, the East End Rowers group, which is going to, get that floating dock. My sense is, I'm excited, and I know you guys must be really excited. But there is, I'm getting a lot of ideas from people. I'd like to help you, uncover your brand that I think you have in play, which is important to my work, and it's an important part of, making this activation plan hang together well. Really understanding who are your audiences, who are your potential new audiences as well as your existing audiences. Because, I feel like you're in this great geographic location, and you're surrounded by, hundreds of thousands of people who, wake up on any given day wondering, what can we do today? Where can we go? Let's get the kids out of the house. And you're lining yourselves up to be a really clear, profound answer to those questions for the surrounding areas here. And what I personally see right now is lining up, as like a phenomenal family entertainment destination, along with, arts and culture. You've got theater, you've got East End Arts, you've got these things as well, but, you've got an aquarium that's got a steady stream of people who are coming here. You've got mariners coming here on a daily basis. You've got a science center that is to be, and then, you've got this town square project. So the strong feeling I'm getting at this point is that, you are going to be seen as the destination, in this neck of the woods for any family, and also young people who are, looking for other kinds of entertainment, including, the music and the theater and, all that stuff. So, to me that seems like a great niche to occupy, but I'd love to hear any thoughts on that, on those impressions.
I agree with you. I think one area that we don't concentrate on is young professionals.
Yeah.
Or college kids who have graduated and looking, and unfortunately we're losing that population here in Riverhead, and I think this is gonna bring it in, and hopefully they'll have affordable housing to live in and share, and be able to walk to, have the walkability, which is very important, and that will create that density that we need. But the density that's created has to be across the board, and that's what makes these neighborhoods flourish, is to have the different types of density, making it walkable, and getting the information out. Unfortunately, we don't have yet a good sense of getting the information out to the public, sometimes including, what activities, what's going on, who's coming in, and the bid is working on that, and that's very important to get it out to the public, and to draw people to Riverhead, so.
I think we're really lucky to be engaged in a TOD revitalization as well. I mean, I think that's going to really lend to, the younger vibe down here, where they will be within walkable distance, like the supervisor just said, to the downtown area, and be able to, enjoy the culture and the arts and the science that's down there, and still be close enough to the railroad to go where they want to go without having to maybe have a car or do something like that. I think it's really a great time, and one of the things that Barry said that I'm really happy to hear is the naming opportunities for the amphitheater. I've been involved with a couple of capital campaigns in the past, and that is a great opportunity to bring in some private money for naming rights or whatever their inspiration is, but to bring in capital when it's most necessary. So I'm glad to hear that is still on the table.
And I will visit the Bayrock Theater. in Riverhead.
He's got his name all over the place. He wants it somewhere else?
Not me. I'm just saying, it's a great opportunity for people to invest in the town and the town to reap the rewards of it.
Yeah, I
Well-
think, oh, go ahead.
Well, if I could, and it's not necessarily just the physical asset that is a naming opportunity, but, the music series, the summer series.
Sure.
That is very sponsorable. That's,
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing, usually when that program gets printed, like, the whole bottom half of the page is like filled with sponsors.
Yeah.
So, I
And the
think
Jones
it's
Beach
all-
Theater, it hasn't been called that in years. I mean, there
Yeah.
must be 10 different,
Yeah.
10 different people that had it. And-
Also, just quickly to Councilman Wright's point, I mean, as exciting as the town square is, and it's incredibly exciting, we definitely don't overlook the incredible interest that we've had in the TOD project, and to have
Excuse me, Joe, they need you to move closer to the mic.
to have top-notch companies express sincere interest in developing that TOD, and to have the TOD committee carefully look at those RFPs and to ultimately choose RXR to help us redevelop our most problem area that has the most blight, that's been a problem for all these years. To have that kind of company and to have other companies that had expressed interest as part of that process is certainly a credit to all the work that this town board has done to finally have Riverhead realize its full economic development potential there. But, I mean, those two projects are what's ultimately going to change the course of history here, so.
And it's also very important that we increase our culture. That's also one of the main components when you revive a town, is to ensure that there's places where people can go, relax, join together, understand the history around them, and thank God we have the East End Arts, but I think we could probably try to improve a little bit on that end.
Yeah, no, that can be expanded. I did want to just also give you an update on the master developer scenarios, because we haven't talked about that in a while.
Okay.
We've been working very closely with RXR. We have a standing biweekly meetings. We have a draft master developer agreement. Anne Marie is working on that
John,
diligently.
can you explain RXR, because I don't know if the
Yeah,
public
so-
understands. We understand, but.
Yeah, when we,
A lot of feedback up here, Larry.
And from the table.
when the developer, when you issued the RFQ, we received a number of responses, as Joe was discussing, and you ultimately had the TOD committee make a recommendation to you. You selected RXR as the master developer, so it's Reckler is also known as, and they're partnering with Georgica Green Ventures, who developed the Riverhead Lofts building downtown, and they're partnering together, excited to do a mixed-use development with residential above and commercial and amenities below, but on the old train station surface parking lot. So the partnership just expanded because the county of Suffolk then pitched in the lot that they own on Griffin Avenue to create the parking garage. So that parking garage will now, it looks like it's going to be about 330 some odd stalls. It will be open to the public, and it'll be lined with residential uses, so it won't look like a parking garage. It'll look like a real nice street presence, and so that's the update with that. And we think I think Emery was here earlier, but we discussed, we think in August we'll have the qualified and eligible sponsor hearing ready for you to work on. And simultaneously, we're working with Petrocelli developers on the master developer agreement for the town square. The DRI process and how that changed the way things were going is going to wind up modifying that arrangement to some degree. We're not exactly sure how, because we don't know when the money will come and how much is going to go to which project, and whether we get other grant money. So that's evolving. I think it's just a short distance behind the RXR project, but while the DRI was going on, all of this was still continuing. We haven't dropped the ball. Barry and Phil have picked up the next level for us, and now we'll drill down into what you want to see there, make sure that it's what you want, and then we can build those projects into that framework. And I think this is how you do it. We create an experience in downtown Riverhead for families and younger people and older people, and with the culture, as Phil mentioned, and the family-friendly activities. I think we have all the ingredients for a very successful redevelopment. That's way long overdue.
And the community buy-in for the town square is in large part because of the community engagement process that we got a lot of help with from Barry. The DRI process had extensive community engagement as well, and both of the qualified and eligible hearings processes for both the TOD and the town square are going to provide us future opportunities to have even more community engagement, so we ensure that we'll have their ultimate buy-in.
Just to give you time frame, so when we adopted the TOD zoning, which was in, I think, January of 21, just 16 or 18 months later, we have a development under construction, which is the 203 Osborne Avenue building, and that's to bring a developer that's willing to invest $20 million in the worst part of our downtown is pretty incredible, and I think that's the kind of pace we're looking at with these other projects. So
it had been like an eyesore for
millions
25, 30 years.
Yeah. So if we can get these master developer agreements and processes, the urban renewal processes, moved forward by the end of the year, it wouldn't be crazy to think that, because Barry and Phil's, their project's going to be the end of the summer, we're getting an update to the parking study to give us information on the parking garage we're looking at on First Street. And, so within the next 2 years, I think you're going to see shovels in the ground on these projects, along with further community engagement and discussions. And, it's getting to the exciting part.
So Dawn, I hope it's in the next year, but I just would like to go back to what Barry had mentioned this a long time ago. If you have a town square and you don't activate it, it's useless. And
Yes.
I totally agree, and I totally agree with Phil. I mean, people want us to say, oh, we can be the next Patchogue. Patchogue is a person, right? Riverhead is a person, and they look very, very different. So I appreciate that you absolutely recognize that. So to the activation point and to the sponsorship point, And I'm gonna also say, I'm the one that, so you know, Barry, that requests that the buildings on the two buildings, Science Center and the hotel that are proposed, that the Science Center put the planetarium on the next story, and that the hotel come back and let them go up and take the fifth story. And the reason for that is, we're not gonna get somebody to sponsor the amphitheater if you can only handle a crowd of 500. There's no ROI in that, visibility. And I spoke to Phil earlier, so I'm sorry, Phil, if I repeat some stuff. To me, it's gotta be a minimum of 2,000 people for two reasons. One is the sponsorship opportunity, and two is to also help the businesses. And with that, and I brought this up with Phil earlier, I don't see it happening, I see it happening with daylight LED screens. That gives us, because I don't just focus on weekends. I look at, okay, the dead days, okay? So with daylight LED screens, it not only gives the sponsor the opportunity to, during the day, to do what they do on the screens, right? People to see it. But also gives us the ability to do movie nights, which our recreation department does. And during this, when school is out, we can attract a lot of people, down there. I totally agree with the art aspect, since we did reflections, which you probably saw, which we get, first night, I think we got 2,000 people, and people thought that artists from the city did it, so. So with that, that's my reasoning for the shortening of the buildings and allowing them to go up.
I just wanted, maybe you could just, because Phil and Joe and I had a conversation yesterday regarding the amphitheater, and I think I'd love you to share those thoughts that you had regarding the amphitheater, because and this is the really important reason why we need Phil and Barry, because, I'm just a lawyer, so I don't understand how this stuff works. So, maybe you just give them that, just the thought process with the amphitheater and that multi-use idea.
I've seen a lot of amphitheaters that were built with the best of intentions and hardly get used. And this is a danger. I just want to warn anybody who has the concept of building an expensive facility to know, before they go into design for such a thing, you really have to know what the business and programming plan is first. Like, if you don't have an organization lined up that's going to be ready to go on opening day and has a calendar of events worked out, has their budget worked out, understands where the funding is coming from, like what the fees are going to cover, a full-fledged business plan and commitment to run that facility, then you should not be building a facility. And I've literally seen amphitheaters that were only used once, and that was in a city in Canada that the staff was, it was a real lesson learned for me. Let's just say, what I would say is the better model these days that people, so a lot of people have learned this lesson. Hard lesson to learn if you're that case study. But there are other ways that you can equally as well accommodate programming and 2,000 people, and have the lighting in place and the sound and the power that you need, but without building a big cement structure that costs $1.5 million. So whether it's allocating, certainly you need to allocate the space where events will happen, identify the staging area, figure out, well, what would we do for a stage? Oftentimes it's easier to just bring in a stage for the season and dismantle it at the end of the season. A lot of things are portable. You can designate an area for a support trailer that would accommodate musicians, or like a theater group, or like another area where you could pull up restrooms that you need. And when you think of it that way, you're not sinking the ship financially before you even get started. And in fact, you could, if you have a budget of $1.5 million, I told Dawn, maybe you should take $1 million of it and create a programming endowment that will actually get that place activated and fund programs for several years, and use the $500,000 for these other, power infrastructure, power and sound. But, you don't actually need to build anything much.
Well, Bob and I have talked at length about this, and I gave Dawn as well some background information. Like,
Okay.
for example, you go to Bank of New Hampshire and Lake Winnipesaukee, it's not, the amphitheater is what happens at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But when you come into the facility, it's the marketplace downtown where it is so vibrant, there's so many things and so many different, venues for like restaurant dining, all these other activities. I mean, there's just vendors showing quads, ATVs, all different people selling products and doing things. So it's a marketplace that's there. So people, when you have a ticket to a concert, I mean, we get there at 5 o'clock and the show starts at 8. But it's like there's so many other things to do. And I think that's what downtown Riverhead can have down there, is like to people to visit the shops, the restaurants, the dining, all of that. And then then the show starts at 8. But I agree with Bob with the fact that if it's small, then you don't get, some of the higher premier, the events that attract people. So there are simply just, well-off artists that are not gonna come and attend a theater that has 500 seats or 1,000 seats, I do believe if you build it, they will come. I'm not saying that the entire downtown has to be one large amphitheater, but I think it could be in multiple levels where, initial seating down below, but then higher plateaus, that can be used for other events where just like during the week, people can have barbecues and other things that can be moved aside for just generalized seating and things of that nature. Multi-use, great, but I think it does have to have the capacity to draw, higher entertainment venues to come to the town, and you incorporate the marketplace into it. So, I mean, Brookhaven Amphitheater, I think does very well, but it's the theater, and then what happens outside of that, it's the tailgating, the people on their own, and I'm saying, no, we don't have the parking down there. Our parking is going to be someplace else. We're not going to have the tailgates. We want to have them in the restaurants and the stores and the venues. And we have the Peconic Riverfront that we're just not utilizing. And to be able to sit out on the Peconic Riverfront and to dine and to gather and so forth, we need to put it to use.
There was at one time, we had concerts that were very, very well attended.
Yeah.
40,000 people
Blues
over
festivals.
3 days. I just want to
Was
add.
it that much?
Yeah, it was 40,000 people over 3 days, and what it did was a blues
At
festival.
Blues festivals?
Every restaurant had a band, also a blues band, and it was just, and
Yeah.
it was great. And we almost took it over at another 200-acre piece at the time because they failed to do it. But just a quick thing, and I want to use amphitheater as a placeholder because I have looked at stages that are to your point. I'm really glad to hear that you guys are going to have input into what the parking needs are going to be, which will then determine the size of the parking garage. Because I've heard numbers from 454 to a little over 500, and when in my simple math mind, when there are 539 units, okay, that tells me right away, okay, we're gonna need somewhere around there, plus 40 for the hotel. In addition, you have the science center, you have the town square, you have the theater. So and I know you guys are gonna do this, and I really appreciate you doing that. I've come up with a number. I wanna see if we land in the same place. And I am not afraid of whatever height that garage needs to be to not only accommodate now, but to look toward the future. Because I've seen some plans where it was like 3 stories, and you guys would know this. You get, when you build a parking garage, you lose the parking basically below, right? Because the infrastructure, but that's another issue. But I've seen a plan where it's like 2 stories all the way across the north side and 3 stories, and then we can add on and all this other stuff. But, glad you guys are involved in this process.
Bob, what's your number?
I'm not telling you. I want to see.
Oh, it's okay.
I want to see where you come in, because every number I've heard so far is not going to work. So,
Okay. One word, I just want to, because Bob has mentioned this, and I think we've heard all the council members and the supervisors say affordable family entertainment. It's not just family entertainment, but there has to be affordable aspects. We talked about something like a splash pad potentially being free, and the adaptable playground and things like that. But affordable is an important part of family entertainment in Riverhead. It is part of your brand, and in addition to the arts, science, and culture brand, I think those two things together really differentiate you. We don't want to forget the word affordable. Supervisor, you brought it up at the beginning of this meeting, but we need to keep that word included in our thoughts so that we make sure that we provide kind of a full spectrum of entertainment, a full range, just like we're trying to do with housing downtown, a full range, not just target, one segment of market or accommodate one segment of your residents.
Barry, and thank you for understanding that point, because it's critical. In developing towns, you need livable density at various levels. You need walkability, you need open space, and you need culture. And I think we're getting strong on that. The last component is mobility, and that might be something that we should concentrate a little bit on. Possibly a trolley, consult with the MTA, maybe have a bus line between the TOD and downtown, and that's also critical. So we're hitting on, we pretty much working on the living density at various levels. The walkability is going to happen because as soon as these projects come in, the open space, we got to ensure that we create as much open space. People want to walk their dogs, they want to, after work, when they get home, they want to go to the park, want to grab something to eat and be able to walk. And the culture, we're getting there, but mobility, I think we are lacking.
Yeah.
And I think we should concentrate
So we were
on that.
interviewed by the LIRR MTA for their transit pilot study that will include that TOD and getting connected to not just local bus service, but Hampton Jitney and bikes and scooters and everything else that we're going to have available, and potentially they could give us that recommendation. But we spoke to Reckler or RXR and GGV relating to, potentially shuttling people from that upper garage downtown. Those are definitely things that are in the conversation. But just to give you like an idea, walkability, the parking consultant came out last Thursday, and Joe and I walked them the entire downtown. We started at the Suffolk Theater, we went all the way up to the TOD, down behind the courts, all the way up from West Main Street. It took 45 minutes, that's it. And we were, stopping and chatting along the way, and it really is just incredibly walkable. It's just that people don't feel that they know where they want to go. Like, I know where we're going and you know where we're going, but if you're coming from out of town, well, where am I going? So there's a lot that goes into that, and that's exactly what Barry and Phil are going to work on for us. How do you get what you want to happen, how we make sure it continues to happen in a way that maintains the activity level and, brings the experience that you want, that family-friendly downtown, and how we just, make that better going forward.
And part of my job would be to help define that breadcrumb trail. I think of it as a breadcrumb trail. So like starting from the aquarium, let's say, how do we lead families into Town Square and along Main Street? And likewise from the other direction.
I think it's only a 7-minute walk, right?
It's
Between both
7-minute
locations?
walk from
Yeah.
the train station to the aquarium. That's the furthest end of,
Wow.
downtown proper.
So it's definitely doable.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
you know,
I've not gotten much exercise on this visit because all my meetings are right next to each other.
yeah.
I will say, one of the other things that I think people are interested in is making sure that we have a heightened sense of security. And I know we're going to be working on getting our police department up to, bigger levels so that we can ensure the public's safety in all of these endeavors. And I think that's one of these things that will grow as the project starts to activate itself.
Yeah, and we have that in our plans. We have to enhance our security.
Yep.
We have to start looking at, to install further cameras. And I think I need to speak to McCormick on that, go on to the next level. Our police department is at the budgeted level, which it hasn't been in a long time. We're looking to increase. We started the budget process. The supervisor, as chief financial officer, will, and the accountant is going to, I think in the next week, we're starting the process. It's a budgetary process, and we'll be working on that, including the union contracts that are up. There is a process in place, and that process has to take place through my office, through the accountant office, and we're gonna move. I'm gonna keep on adding, and hopefully, as funds come in, if we close on EPCAM, that's great. We're gonna make sure that that money goes back to the public and enhance personnel. So we're working on it. Some good things are happening.
I just want to say that the earliest, one of the earliest pioneers of revitalization of urban areas, towns, and villages is Mayor Capel. He's one of the first ones that I remember, and I remember there was a lot of pushback from the people out in Greenport and the town of Southold about what he was trying to do. There were naysayers for sure. Mayor Pontieri will tell you the same thing from Patchogue, all these naysayers. But now look at it, and that's what I've said right from the beginning here. Anybody who's a naysayer about what we're trying to do in the town, you have to look at the big picture at the end of the day. And if you're just looking at, oh, you ripped buildings down, that's horrible. Well, why did we rip them down? What's coming in its place? Look at these things, and you'll be able to realize the revitalization that can happen. And the success stories, certainly sustainability, Greenport, Mayor Capel, what he did out there to this day, it's busy. Oh, and by the way, Mayor, if you're listening, I want our carousel back. You know, that was just one part of a beautiful area that they did, and they took advantage of the water, like Ken mentioned, take advantage of the riverfront. We've all known we've needed to do that for years. Huntington, very successful. Farmingdale, the most recent, Farmingdale Main Street, very successful. Doing what we're doing here, but I will say this, and no disrespect to any of the other towns or villages, the best is going to be the last, and that's the town of Riverhead. And the work that has been put in between Barry and Dawn with the CDA and Joe and the crew, Anne Marie, we are going to be second to none when this is all finished.
Yep.
And there's so much work that is going into this. There's so many people behind the scenes that don't get applauded for it that really need to be. But I'm proud to be from Riverhead. I'm proud to going to be from Riverhead and stay in Riverhead, and can't wait to see this come to fruition, because we're going to be the biggest and best of all those towns that I previously mentioned. No disrespect, but I think our plan is, we've learned from we've learned from their mistakes, we've learned from their successes, and that has helped us get to where we are today. So I'm really proud of what's about to come, and thank you guys for all your hard work.
I do want to just give you an update on the wall, too, and I meant to do that because
Yes.
it's been a long time coming. So the construction wall on Main Street, on the Town Square development area, has been up for a while. We had hoped to take it down in the spring, but the Department of Transportation has a drainage issue right in front of the Suffolk Theater, and had asked us to work with them to put those, they were going to put drainage rings, and they needed an easement on that property. That started in April. It's still not concluded. We decided last week that we are going to move forward and do that project ourselves, because it's easier that way, and it's, so we're in the middle of, I just approved the purchase order for the drainage rings. Mike Zaleski's going to do that work, and we are going to get Petroselli back in there to finalize what's there. So, and I asked Phil and Barry to think about what we might do to use it temporarily. You know, that's public property. I want the public to understand what it could be. And I think in some of the meetings that we had with Barry and his team last week, you probably heard they're thinking about doing QR codes, so that we post a QR code in front of this theater, for instance. You could click on that and it'll show you what's coming. I think that's a fantastic idea, and that'll help people understand. But also in the interim, before it's finished, we want to start using that property. So Joe's in the middle of developing a new road race called Rudolph's River Run. We're gonna do a holiday-themed race from Tanger to downtown. We're working with the bid and with Tanger very closely to really try to make those connections better. And so have some of those end-of-race events downtown at Christmas time. So we want maybe put a holiday tree there, we'll see. But we've been dying to take that wall down. In fact, we told East End Arts, do not paint the wall, because it's coming down. So once the wall comes down, we're hoping that East End Arts will work on a mosaic-like project and paint the side of the Crafted building. And then we'll really start to be able to see what it's gonna look like. I don't want people to think there's nothing going on there. It's just that DOT thing just threw us for a complete loop. So-
And we were at a point where we thought we were moving forward a couple of weeks ago, and that didn't work out.
Yeah, so we
And,
went to Plan Q.
Yes. So Dawn had the foresight to say, let's do it
I
ourselves.
think, I don't want to take credit for that. I think maybe Ken Testa was like, let's just do it.
Okay, Ted, and so the town
And I think
decided,
Mayor Capel would agree, because I think he was kind of like goosing us to do it also a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago, so.
I walked out the theater with him on one of the LPC meetings, and you see the wall, and that was the intention, was to open up the riverfront. He goes, that wall has to come down.
It's true.
So
He's
I hope you're
100% right.
still listening, Mayor. So actually, the good news is that we moved in a different direction. And that's what we do in government. When there's a problem, we try to get around it, we try to solve it.
Yeah.
And so if it was Ken who decided to do that, I'm glad we're moving. And I understand it's going to happen very quickly, correct?
Yeah, so once,
Dawn,
yeah.
DOT, I just got the phone
Oh,
call.
so they had to approve our concept, which we kindly sent to them, and they are good to go. So I think Mike's gonna
Okay.
start that next week, so you'll see some bulldozer and
Some activity?
track hoe activity back there next week. And then once that's done, Mr. Petroselli can come back in with his team and finish the project that he was hired to do for the demo, which that's all within the budget. And then we can start thinking about what we can do with it. But we're not putting benches in there. We talked about that yesterday.
So,
No random benches.
so Dawn, it just, and
Yeah.
I love, oh, go ahead.
Okay.
I love the whole plan. I would like us to consider wayfinding signs on Sound Avenue and Route 58, given that we have about 1.5 million visitors coming out here.
Yeah.
You know, if you see dining on the waterfront, 1.5 miles, it might send people to downtown.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
So that'll
put
be
that
the
in there.
next, we have some money left for wayfinding, but it's gotta be spent only in downtown proper, but that's another project we could work on.
Okay. And the splash pad, I'm so in favor of, given our community and the need for it. And I was talking to Phil earlier, and I hope it can accommodate about 40 kids at a time, so it's large enough.
Yeah.
But anyway,
The
thank
other
you.
thing too is the playground that's being planned is adaptive, so it'll be accessible to kids of all abilities, families of all abilities, and we think that that will be, we really want that to be a nice centerpiece to our project. It'll be all free, and there's some really cool ideas floating around about that right now, so.
I like the one you had that goes up in the air.
Yeah,
Because
the
the more
climbers, that's Steve
play
Sarter
space we
found
can
those,
put
yeah.
in the air, the less we're spreading out on the ground.
True.
So I got a couple questions. So our first preliminary site plans, we're looking around Labor Day, so just a more definitive time frame. Is that what
Yep.
we're thinking of?
Yep.
Yes?
We said we promised we'd be done with our work by the end of, before Labor Day, and then come back and make a presentation to you after Labor Day. But we also said in the interim, we'll share a preliminary draft plan with the board sometime in August.
So I'd be anxious even to see things in the earliest stage, just to.
Yep.
Yeah, myself as well.
Absolutely.
Financing, so outside of our town projects, so the funding, the 9.7 million that is divided up, and some which goes to independent organizations and other revitalization efforts downtown, their funding, should someone, I'll make up a scenario, receive $500,000 for funding, and they really need 3-4 million to complete their project, if they don't receive their entire funding, meaning through their own bank options and mortgages and so forth, commercial financing, what happens to the money that was part of the grant? So if someone receives it and cannot complete their project because
That's a
it's
great
too
question.
scale,
So-
where does that money go?
When it goes,
How does it get back to us?
once the LPC approves the slate of projects, which is underway right now, they're voting on this right now, that goes up to New York State. New York State is going to do further due diligence to make sure that the funding that's awarded is enough to complete the project, and that the sponsor of the project
Anne
is
Marie,
financially,
they're looking for,
has the financial wherewithal to complete the project. So those things will be done before the funding is awarded. If by chance, one of the projects, and one of the reasons they like to have the slate is if something doesn't work out between now and at the end of the year when they planned on doing the contracts for these grants, they have somebody else maybe that could pop in and fill the slot. But once the contracts are signed, if somebody's project fails, that money will not come back, will not come back. So,
it
it'll-
can't be reallocated.
Correct.
It has to
It's
stay
the end
within
of it.
that
So,
project.
But importantly, we've also, the main reason, and we were at the BIDMA meeting, we spoke about this last night, the project, the Upper Town Square, the amphitheater, and the playground are all now separate grant projects. Because if we were to get funding, so for instance, when we got the initial 800,000 for the Town Square project, we had applied for 5.5 million. So we were like, okay, now what? So you all stepped up and took care of that, and then we wound up getting the 10 million. It's that continued investment you're making in ourselves that's really driving the public entities to feel confident in funding us and our, financial status and all those other good things that are happening. But when we have these grants, if we were to, so we applied for things that were not able to be constructed in that grant. So we had to restructure one of our original grants because we weren't allowed to apply for the same project twice. And this happened to the Science Center too. But what had happened was so many things changed between the date we applied for that grant. We had no plans, we had no planning, we had just concepts. And even the Science Center, they didn't know the Town Square was coming, they didn't know this other building was happening, they didn't know both walls were gonna be open to other buildings. They thought they were just gonna go in where they were. So all of those things changed, but it complicated the funding. So we separated the projects now so that if they get funded, they're on their own. If they don't get funded, we can keep applying for other opportunities as they come along.
But there's a financial application, like each project is being individually financially reviewed.
Yes.
And we're confirming that they will in fact have the secondary funding, the third funding sources
Yes,
before we
that's
give them,
correct.
release the grant
That
money.
is the state.
Well, we don't release the
The
grant money.
State Department of State is doing that in conjunction with the consultants. We are not part of that vetting. It's their money, they're doing the vetting.
I just want to make sure it's not somebody's pie in the sky, just like,
No,
okay, I need $7 million and you gave me $300,000
Yes,
and
and
that could
they're-
have been used elsewhere. I want to make sure that each project is being financially vetted, that they are in fact going to be able
Yes,
to
and there
utilize
were
that.
projects that fell off the list because of that, right, that haven't even moved forward from here, like, didn't make the first cut for those reasons. And then they're gonna further vet those projects and the financial information that's been submitted in connection with them, and then do the best they can to make sure that those projects get done. And then we continue, so we have these three, for the town, we have 4 projects that are our projects. That's the Upper Town Square, the playground and the amphitheater, and the Main Street pedestrian improvements. Those are town-sponsored projects. If those are awarded, we will be in charge of administering them through our office. But if we don't get one of those funded for some reason, we're already working with private entity people to potentially fund them as well as Mr. Petroselli, but we can continue to apply. We're in the process of completing applications right now that are gonna get filed. You saw those resolutions yesterday. Those applications are getting filed next Friday for the same project, even though we don't know what's coming from the DRI. So we're not taking our foot off the gas here, we're just continuing
You can't get both, but it's
to
sort of.
apply. But we don't wanna wait till next year, we don't want to wait till the next opportunity, we just wanna keep forging on, so.
It's like hedging our bets.
Yeah, but it's the momentum. Momentum is so critical, and I know Barry mentioned it, I know Phil's talked about it. We are at this perfect spot right now, and that's why I wanted to update you on the wall, because that feels like a lack of momentum, and I don't want that to be the perception. We really want everyone to know that we are full on here.
Is there
And
a
that's why
time-
even before we finished the DRI, Barry and Phil came back and we're we're already working on the next level, so we're not stopping.
Is there a time frame for this financing that these projects must be completed by? Like,
2 years is what the DRI is looking to have them done.
okay.
when we applied, if you'll remember, they were looking for shovel-ready. Shovel-ready is an interesting term because in the realm of government, the amount of things that you need to do to get a shovel in the ground is really kind of incredible, particularly in New York. So, but I think we were already further along than probably most of the other DRI communities throughout the state in our planning and development processes, just so they're just plugging, we were just like, send checks, we're happy to send checks. We know what we want to do, and if we haven't figured it out yet, we could do it on our own. We don't really need a lot of input. We had done so much planning already, so we were happy to have Perkins Eastman. They kind of really just basically said, oh, this all looks great, onward, and so that's what we're doing. But very happy to have received that funding. It's going to be really the catalyst for everything moving forward, and we're waiting August 12th. We should hear on the RAISE grant. That's $35 million. We're getting a little good buzz from that.
Yes.
Coconut Telegraph. We're hoping.
Yes, I got
We're hoping on that.
I communicated with Senator Schumer's office, and they're supporting the project.
And if we don't get it this year, we'll make it even better next year. This is our third year running, making that application. And then we're happy this year we don't have to apply for the DRI. We have time to do other
Finally
things.
got it.
So, so I think that's the update.
Thank you
Nice,
very
though,
much.
You got it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and perhaps you want to think about doing this kind of regularly, so we don't, because
No,
we
I don't
got
wanna go through
buried
that
in that
process.
grant. I
Right.
think we should be, I know that Phil and Barry are going to come back and give you their, new plan, but maybe as we move forward, just so the public is aware of what's happening, we just hadn't had the time to really update everybody and make sure that
It's been
everybody's on
very
the same page.
long days for the last 4 months.
It has.
But this was great. This was
Yeah.
really great. I think a lot of
Yeah.
information got out to the public. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's what we wanted, so I'm glad to hear that.
And it's an open process. It's always been an
Yeah.
open process.
Yeah, there'll be
And
more
again,
to follow.
just to reiterate, the state was a very open process.
Yes,
it was-
multiple public meetings, and all of the LPC's working sessions were all public, open to the public. The
Everything was-
public wasn't allowed to comment, but open to the public, and recorded and posted online, so.
It's available,
Yep.
again,
Yep.
riverheaddri.com.
Yeah,
And, well, thank you for coming.
I would hope, Supervisor, can you put like this, I think it would be great, like the first work session of every month to just get an ongoing update or something, or however brief it may be.
Yeah.
But so that we just continuously get a progress report on how we're going forward.
This was the first step.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That'd be good.
absolutely.
perfect. All right, well, thank you for taking the time to hear us out, and thank you for
Well,
coming.
thank you for
Barry.
briefing the board.
As
Thank you.
always.
Barry,
Great
thank
meeting you
you.
today.
Mayor Capel, thank you for,
Thank you, Mayor
Wait.
Capel.
Wait, before
Listening
you go,
in.
Barry, make sure that we have enough parking spaces at the TOD.
Okay, Bob,
Thank
you
you.
have my phone number.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have a great
you.
day, everybody.
okay, very informative, and thank you, CDA.
Thank you, Phil.
It's remarkable
Appreciate
what
your
you're doing. All right, anything else? This concludes our open session discussion items, and in a moment,
you.
I'm going to ask to go for a first and a second to enter into executive session on 2 contractual matters relating to public-private partnership. That'll be myself and Thomas, and matters related to the purchase of real property, Hubbard, Videnti, and myself. And can I have a first and a second to enter into executive session, please?
Motion?
Second?
All in favor? All opposed? So moved. Everyone, please be safe.